Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sports Department Podcast with Stephen Bologna and Jesse Norman. And the NBA season is officially in the books. We were wrong, Jesse. The Milwaukee Bucks taking care of business in 6 games, downing the Phoenix Suns. Giannis Antetokounmpo gets that long-awaited ring and the final MVP award. And it was a fun series. You know, two teams we didn't really expect to be there, but overall, I think it was a good series. Chris Paul does not get that ring, which we were kind of hoping for. And now the question becomes, does he stay with the Suns another year? And is that Suns title window closed? We're also going to be talking about NBA draft stuff because that is about a week away, and just some off-season rumors and stuff going around. But first off, how you doing?
Hey, as good as I can be without basketball being on anymore. Luckily, the draft is in a week. We get free agency pretty quickly after that.
Yeah.
So we'll have content until about, probably mid-August, but then mid-August to like September, we got nothing.
Yeah.
After summer league, but luckily we'll be getting back into it in October. So
Summer League's so funny. So
really
many players
back
just
already.
go off. I hate Summer League. I was jinxed
Kevin
by
Knox
Kevin Knox.
flashbacks.
Yeah, Kevin Knox. So bad. But yeah, the Milwaukee Bucks winning it in 6 games. Giannis averaging 35 and 13 with almost 2 blocks per game. Drew Holiday stepping up to the plate a bit with 9 assists per game, and Chris Middleton with 24 points per game. Just give me your overall thoughts on the series.
I mean, it was a fun series. I think Coach Bud, as critical as we've all been, made a lot of adjustments that really helped the Bucks take advantage of the series after going down 2-0, winning the next 4 all the way through. We felt like it was going to be a thing where the home team really had the advantage, and the Suns dropped Game 5. And granted, the Suns played their absolute best game in Game 5, the game that they lost. They played incredible, but the Bucks just played a little bit better, especially at the end, obviously, with the Drew Holiday steal to the Giannis alley-oop. Congratulations to the Bucks. I mean, Giannis had a fantastic series. I mean, there's no other way to put it. For a guy that literally can't shoot, just the most dominating performance in the paint I think we've seen since Shaq in the finals. As far as I'm concerned, I can't think of another player anytime soon that's been doing what he did in the post and down under and protecting the paint and doing all these different things that were asked of him. And then on the other side, Chris Middleton, who I swear made almost every single big shot that he needed to.
Yeah.
The more difficult the shot, the more confident I was that it was going in for Chris Middleton. He just has these instances where he can just make any shot on the floor. It's like a Jordan Kobe-esque shot, and it goes in. Drew Holiday struggled a little bit offensively, obviously not on assists, but shooting. He had ups and downs. Game 5 played really good. Other games, a mixed bag. But defensively, the pressure he was able to put on Chris Paul, the pressure he was able to put on Devin Booker when Paul went out, it was really a game changer because while Chris Paul is, one of the best point guards of our generation, obviously one of the best point guards of all time, he is also undersized and he is a little bit older at this point. And when Drew Holiday, who is really, built for a point guard, like Drew Holiday is probably one of the strongest point guards in the NBA. When he is pressing you full court for portions of the game and is just draining you, Chris Paul was the motor to the Suns offense. And I think that's also kind of where it dwindled off because Chris Paul, as great as he is, he was inconsistent in these finals. And I think that's what did the Suns in, sadly enough. There was instances where he would take over games, and then there was instances where you felt like you couldn't see him for 2 quarters. Defensively, obviously, he is not the player that he once was, especially at his stature. DeAndre Ayton also very inconsistent games, really highs, really lows. And then, Booker also really good games. And then you've seen at the end of game 6, he didn't play good pretty much that entire game. So the Bucks just put together more good performances than the Suns. If the Suns really could have just pulled out that game 5, we're having a probably totally different conversation right now.
Yeah.
But they couldn't secure their home court in game 5, played the best that they possibly could and still lost. So congratulations to the Milwaukee Bucks. First ring for them in 50 years.
Yeah.
72, I think it was, with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So, I mean, congrats to them. Congrats to their fans.
It's
sad
crazy
for the Suns. Sad for Chris Paul.
It's crazy because this Giannis pretty much 2 years ago kind of started the rumor started that if they didn't win a ring soon, he was going to leave. He signs the big extension, and the first year with that big extension, they do win. And then there were rumors that if they didn't beat the Nets, Mike Budenholzer was going to be fired.
I think that stands. I think if it's interesting, and you'll see people put it on Twitter a lot. I've seen the post at least like 5-6 times at this point, but it's a picture of the Durant shot with the foot on the line, and it says like, if Durant's shoe is one size smaller, the Bucks are now firing Bud. They're probably looking at different trades. They're seeing what they can do. The holiday deal is looked at as a failure. All of that now is gone.
Yeah.
And Giannis even addressed it in his press conference of, even if we don't win another one ever again, that's okay, because we did it the hard way. We did it this way, which I totally think he's just setting himself up because he knows they weren't the best team this year. He absolutely knows they're not winning another ring in the next 2 years. So he's gotta pull those expectations down. But they went out and they got their ring. The holiday deal now looks like a great deal, because that was your star point guard in the finals, who carried you defensively, who made the big steal when it mattered most in game 5, put you ahead with the Giannis alley-oop. The Chris Middleton obviously looks fantastic next to Giannis now, where we've always been critical, kind of, a CJ McCollum to Damian Lillard situation, where we're like, they might have to trade this guy. They might have to get a better player. There was also, people saying Giannis can't win a ring as the number one option. That now has to go away. Even if, again, they never win again, you can't say Giannis can't win a ring as a first option, because they did it.
And
Bud's job is safe, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, Giannis is only 26 years old, too, which is just insane to think about. You look at his resume, and to me, this, I'm going to ask you this after. 5-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, Defensive Player of the Year, 4 times All-Defensive Team, Finals MVP, 2 times MVP. Does he guarantee himself the Hall of Fame with this ring, you think?
I think he had the Hall of Fame before the ring, honestly. I think this locks him as first ballot for sure. He honestly probably was first ballot anyway at the end of his career, even if he didn't win a ring. But one thing about the Hall of Fame of basketball, it is a really easy Hall of Fame to get into. Like, so easy. Like Jamal Crawford is probably going to go into the NBA Hall of Fame. Lou Williams might get into the NBA Hall of Fame. So, if I definitely think Giannis is a first ballot Hall of Famer, especially with this ring. And he still has so much time left. He's only 26. He's, a lot of people group him in kind of with the LeBron, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, even like Joel Embiid kind of thing there. But he is significantly younger. He's more closer to the Luka Doncic, the Trae Young, that era. People want to age him because you expected him to come out at the age of probably 20 or 21 when he came out at 18. And yeah, he's been in the league 8 years now, but he's only 26 and, actively going to get better. Probably hasn't even really hit his prime yet for probably another couple years.
Yeah. And, we talked a little bit about the Suns, and the Suns are still such a young team. I mean, Devin Booker, Ayton, um, McCall Bridges, Cam Johnson, and the factor is going to be Chris Paul. Hit me with what if Chris Paul leaves? Does that window close, or what if Chris Paul stays?
Well, if Chris Paul leaves, the championship window, at least for next year, is absolutely closed. For me, Booker, that point guard experience that they tried to do last year and tried to do in spurts this year when Paul went to the bench. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. Like you can watch it, you can dissect it as much as you want. Booker at the point guard position, being the primarily ball handler, trying to set up the offense, doesn't work. Now, is that a case of, especially in the final series, them blitzing Booker whenever Paul was off the court? Sure. But also, you need to factor that in, knowing that Devin Booker can't be your primarily ball handler, in a final situation. So if Paul leaves, they absolutely need to go out, get a different point guard, bring Campaign. I think Campaign's still signed through till next year, a couple of years later. If they're all healthy, everybody comes back. Besides Chris Paul, they're probably still a playoff team. I would say they're not a championship team though. Chris Paul adds so much. If they were to go out and like actively try to get better at point guard and somehow swing a deal for a Damian Lillard somehow, or even a Russell Westbrook or something, I think, who maybe Westbrook isn't better than Paul at this point, but you need that stability, because if Chris Paul leaves and you don't fill that gap and you just try to put Campaign out there next to Devin Booker and
Nope.
you kind of just grab another point guard, you're probably a 6 or a 7 seed, I would say. I don't see, even next year with Paul back, I really don't see this team making it back to the finals. I mean, every team they played was arguably better if they're healthy. Lakers, Nuggets, Clippers, all three teams. I mean, you could make an argument that if they're just healthy, at least on paper, which doesn't always mean a lot, but they were the not as good team.
Yeah, and Chris Paul holds a $44 million player option, and there's rumors circulating that the Lakers are looking at him. I've seen reports that some executives believes he might head to the Knicks, and I'm sure there's just a plethora of teams that want his services. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. But
I've seen he could opt out for because he's got a $44 million player option, but he might opt out. People think for a 3-year, $80 million, which puts him at like 39, 40 years old. So I don't know. It's tough because when he signed the deal, everybody said Chris Paul's contract was one of the worst in the NBA, and at the end of the contract, you can't make that argument anymore at all. You can't create that argument when he clearly has carried teams at different points. The Thunder, obviously the Suns carried them all the way to the finals. You can't say that is a bad contract. So if he at 36 years old opts out and you do have to give him a deal till he's 39 or 40, you can't say then when you sign him 3 years to 80 million if that's a bad deal, because everybody already said this one was a bad deal, and it clearly wasn't, because every team you went to has had success.
And I am happy for Chris Paul in the sense that when he was with the Rockets, and he was called the choke artist in those playoff performances. So it was nice to see him carry a team with the Thunder to the playoffs, and then the Suns to the finals. They couldn't finish the job, but Milwaukee, this was their year. It was destiny. They luckily got past the Nets. I know you are very upset about that, but Giannis to me is just I think the most athletically gifted player of all time. I mean, there's just nobody that size that can move so smoothly. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, at that size, at the length, the speed, everything, he's athletically probably the most gifted. I'm going to say this, though. For people saying he is the best player in the NBA, come on.
Yeah, no.
I'll give Giannis top 3, but come on, you can't say he is the best player when Kevin Durant alone took him to 7 and was a shoe size away from beating them with James Harden with one leg. Fantastic finals performance. I'll give him top 3. You cannot. Everybody's going out. He's the undisputed number 1 player in the league now. No, not.
Yeah,
I don't see it. I don't see how you can make that argument.
I'm with you. I do agree, but Milwaukee Bucks, they are your 2021 NBA champions. Now we're talking a little bit about the offseason, and the Los Angeles Lakers are looking to improve their point guard position over Dennis Schroeder. Now the reports have said Westbrook, Chris Paul. Now I've seen today actually that Kyle Kuzma wants out, and it's funny, you would find this funny. Kuzma apparently values himself as the same type of player as Jason Tatum, which I just thought was hilarious.
Yeah, I bet he does. I bet he does. Kyle Kuzma has gone on record and said before that he could like average 25 a game if he wasn't playing next to Davis and LeBron. Like he talking about how he needs to understand his role and as a fan who was like sort of mocked for the D'Lo trade because they're you gave up Kuzma. Kuzma was the 27 pick. I'd rather have Kuzma than D'Lo. No. First off, no. Kuzma came out of Virginia. I think it was Virginia, right? Yeah, Virginia at like 21, 22 years old.
Yeah.
So he was already a finished product, and people kept thinking that he was going to progress and get better when in reality his development was mostly done. And now he still thinks he's a better player than he actually is. And I just wonder if the Lakers also share that sentiment of like, oh no, Kyle Kuzma himself is worth like 2 first-round picks, because that delusion is the only way that they can talk themselves into these trades. Because nobody, I don't care what the deal is. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Kyle Kuzma, a single first-rounder at the end of the year this year, and you can't even put in Montrezl Harrell because he's a free agent. He's probably going to opt out anyway. So you can't tell me and sign and trade Schroeder, obviously. But like KCP, Kuzma, Schroeder, and a late first. Stop telling me like that. And Talen Horton-Tucker, who everybody is convinced is a star player, even though he can't get minutes with the Lakers. But no, he's the next coming of I don't even know who. It's crazy the hype that Talen Horton-Tucker has. Like, great for him. Cool. I'm sure he's going to develop into a good player. He is not like a superstar. Like, people act like this guy is going to like become like a messiah. Like, I don't understand. But those assets, like, they don't get you a superstar. They don't get you a real superstar. They don't get you Damian Lillard. They don't get you in the Bradley Beal conversation. They get you in the Chris Paul conversation, the Russell Westbrook, the old point guard on a bad contract, or maybe they could flip one of these assets or two for like Kevin Love or something. But like, you're not this deal that they've constructed in any way of Kuzma, Taylor Horton-Tucker, and a first rounder and KCP. It's not a great package. It's not a great package. Now, do I think the Wizards would jump on it to get off Westbrook's deal? I do. I absolutely do. I think pieces, there's an aspect I've seen where Spencer Dinwiddie said he either wants to get paid or he wants to go home. So if he wants to work out a deal with the Nets, sign and trade to the Lakers, they could possibly send back Kuzma, a pick, maybe KCP. I don't know. But even then, that only works in a sign and trade deal. I don't think them just straight up as assets is going to get you anything more than maybe Westbrook. And Westbrook, if they bring back Drummond and they have Russell Westbrook, like the spacing of that team, like a team of, I don't know who the 2 guard would be at that point, because everybody would have been traded. They would have to get somebody in free agency on a minimum deal to be the shooting guard. You would roll out Westbrook, minimum free agent or MLE free agent, LeBron, Davis, Drummond.
Yeah.
The best 3-point shooter out of all of them is Anthony Davis.
Yeah. And those are 4 like ball dominant players too. I mean, LeBron obviously is, and then Westbrook is Mr. Triple Double. Anthony Davis, obviously,
Well, that's the thing. That's why I can't see the Westbrook fit, because we've seen Westbrook without the ball in Houston. They ran it for a year and they were done with it. Westbrook off the ball doesn't work, because off of the ball, all he can do is cut. And guess what? If you have Anthony Davis and Andre Drummond and LeBron James, where are you cutting? Where can you cut? The lane is clogged. Drummond can't leave the paint.
Yeah.
Like, Drummond literally needs to live there. So that spacing doesn't work. If they can get Chris Paul, obviously I think you go out and do it, because he helped carry the Suns to the finals, a team with literally no playoff experience. The only person who really had any playoff experience was Jay Crowder, who played great in the finals, by the way.
Yeah.
But if Chris Paul can do that for the Suns, you absolutely go out as the Lakers. Him because you know that next year you're.
Yeah. Sorry, my internet crapped out a little bit there, but I got you now. So let's talk about everyone's favorite time, the draft. Every draft is great, and the NBA draft is a week away, and the Detroit Pistons hold number 1, and all signs point to Cade Cunningham, but reports saying that Houston wants Cade really, really bad. And I don't know if Detroit is going to make the move to move back and give up Cade Cunningham. Do you think that's a possibility, or they just?
I think a lot has to be offered to Detroit, like an NFL style, like, trade for the number 1 pick. I'm talking like first, potentially a player. I would absolutely go Cade Cunningham. The only way I trade that pick is if I'm getting a really good young player, a high pick. I would only trade it with like Houston, possibly Cleveland, in that top 3 area. I still want one of those top 3 prospects, because as much as I like Jalen Suggs, I think there is a definitive top 3. I think it's Cade. I think there's Mobley and Green in the 2-3 range. You can kind of put them wherever. And then I think there's a step down, and there's Suggs and Kuminga and Barnes. So I think they would want to stay in that top 3. I personally would not trade the pick. I take Cade Cunningham. The Pistons are also set up, I think, a lot better than people realize. Yes, Jeremy Grant, people automatically thought because he was doing good, they had to trade him, they had to move him. There was no reason for that. He clearly wanted to be in Detroit. That's why he signed the deal in Detroit, and they're building there. Jeremy Grant, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes, you can move off ball a little bit, which they already started to last year with Corey Joseph. They were running 2-point guard lineups where they were putting Killian at the shooting guard, kind of getting him ready for this, I feel like. So I think Cade fits in there so effortlessly, so perfectly. He gives them quite literally exactly what they need: a shot creator, a playmaker, a guy who can get his own shot, and then a guy who can also distribute out to a shooter like Isaiah Stewart is going to start shooting threes, or like kind of already has started to shoot threes. But I think next year you're going to see him really come into his own more, finding his offensive game. And then you have Killian Hayes who can play off the ball as well. I think this whole team is kind of set up to really take in a guy like Cade and really help him out. And it could have kind of, I don't want to compare him already, but it could kind of be a Luka Doncic situation where in 2 years you're looking at it as, wow, this guy like led this team to the playoffs, is really putting this team on his back, and is, the way that Luka really helps out Tim Hardaway in a way is a way that Cade Cunningham could be helping out, Sadiq Bey. And then you have these different players molded around him, like a Dorian Finney-Smith in the form of kind of an Isaiah Stewart, who, Stewart's obviously better, is probably going to be better. But I think they can very much roll out kind of this Dallas role where they have a generational talent, they get him, and they already, have something in place, but really build around him. And Troy Weaver has become one of my favorite GMs in the NBA. He knew that he had to really tear this down and put his imprint on it. And so far, Killian Hayes pending, he really hasn't missed on a draft pick, and I don't think he's going to miss on one this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. And, this is Detroit's chance probably only chance to get their franchise star. So hopefully they don't mess it up. Now, a team you talked about that is kind of a wild card is the Cleveland Cavaliers, because they hold a high pick, and reports are saying that Kevin Love could be moved, and Colin Sexton too, former top 10 pick. And I'm a big fan of Colin Sexton. I hope the Knicks could somehow get their hands on him. But do you see Cleveland trading a few players on draft night or before draft night?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, it's going to depend on Houston, I think. Some people really think Houston's going Mobley. Others really think that he's going Green. I'm kind of leaning more towards Mobley. So if Green is there, it's unquestioned. Even if you have Sexton and Garland, you take Green. The biggest problem with Sexton for Cleveland is they don't want to pay him. Like,
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to. They really just don't want to pay him, and Sexton is at the point. It's kind of like a D'Lo situation where it's like, he's not worth a max contract, but you need to give him one in order to keep his services, because somebody out there will give him a max deal, or he's like kind of on the cusp of like maybe an all-star player. And at this point in the NBA, with free agency being the way that it is, you need to give those level of players the most amount of money that you possibly can. The John Collins of the worlds, they're not max players per se when you just watch them, but getting them on your team and possibly building for the future, that's where that kind of comes in. So I think Sexton with the Knicks, I love that fit. The Knicks have the cap space. That gives them another primary ball handler that can take pressure off of Julius Randle. A pick and roll of Sexton and Randle, I think, would work so well. And then if they keep Mitchell Robinson, having him in the dunker spot off that pick and roll, I think that would be perfect. Obviously, having Reggie Bullock, I think Sexton would fit so well with the Knicks. And I like him as a player. He's a good young talent. But again, you don't know where he's going to develop. You don't know exactly where he's going to end up. And that's kind of the scary part. So I understand Cleveland wanting to trade him, but that I think only happens if Green is available at 3. Because if you get Mobley, there's no reason to trade Colin Sexton. You roll out Garland, you roll out Sexton, Cedi Osman, buy out Kevin Love, put Mobley in at the 4, and you have Jared Allen as your 5. And there's your starting 5 right there. Or excuse me, not Osman, Okoro.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have a favorite prospect that you're looking at? Obviously you have the Cade Cunninghams, the Mobleys, and the Greens, but any sleepers in there?
I think if Scotty Barnes is taken by the right group, the right development group, I think he could turn into a really, really good player. He has such a high defensive floor. Like, he is going to come in as probably the best defender on whatever team he's drafted. Like a Jonathan Isaac type. He comes in, he's automatically probably your best defender. If he can develop offensively, looking at, if the Warriors can possibly get him and develop him as a shooter, I don't want to go as far as to say he has Kawhi Leonard type potential at that rate. Like if he can develop a jumper, his defensive prowess is fantastic. Now, even if he doesn't develop and he just has that defense, I think you're still looking at probably a 10 to 15 year career, a PJ Tucker type thing where you can just throw him on the best wing on the floor and he is just going to harass him the entire time. He is going to make it hard for him the entire time. So Barnes is a player I like a lot. He's really raw. You kind of don't even see a semblance of a jump shot just because he's really focused on defense, athleticism, transition. But if he can develop further, I think he has the potential to be, a top 2-3 player in this class, in a Kawhi Leonard type of role where he might not be that player the first couple of years, but you're looking 5, 6, 7 years down the road and you're like, wow, how did that guy fall, to 7 or 8 when he should have been probably, number 4 in the draft?
I am a big fan of Davion Mitchell from Baylor. I think the one knock on him, he is a little bit older. He's 22, coming on 23, which obviously in the NBA is, most teams like their prospects 18, 19 years old, the one and dones in college or international players. But I think Mitchell, offensive game could use some help, only averaged 14, but I think behind Barnes, probably the best defender in the class. He's very explosive. He shot over 40% from 3 this past season. And I think he could be a good fit wherever he goes. Mocks are having him going number 7 to the Warriors. I don't think that's a good fit, obviously, because they have a point guard. You probably could play Mitchell at the 2. But potential Drew Holiday type player here with that strong build of a point guard, plays solid defense, and has, every now and then that offensive outburst. And he can go anywhere from 7 to mid-teens, really.
Yeah, besides Green and probably Cade, I would say Davion Mitchell's probably the most set up to help a team out right now. He is, as you said, a knockdown shooter from 3, a great defender, has the size to play the 2 as well. Yeah, he's a little bit older, but it's not – I don't think it's a case of Obi Toppin where he's older and just bigger and just, scoring on guys because he's older and bigger and stronger and more athletic. He's still relying on the basketball aspect of it, the jump shots, the layups, all that. So I think Davion Mitchell, if there's a team out there that thinks they're going to be a contender, but they don't think they have the assets to go out and get a star player, somebody I think should trade up and grab Davion Mitchell because he can really help you out right now. If you're Denver and you think, you're really set up, you don't want to trade for Damian Lillard, you just kind of want to run back the same team, maybe you can do like a little sign and trade, do, Barton, a couple first round picks, kind of throw some things in, trade up, to maybe 7 or 8, kind of feel out what you can get if he starts to slip a little bit. Because I think he's going to be an impact player in the NBA from day one.
I think New Orleans, too, could be a team that may want to give a call. I mean, you're rolling out Eric Bledsoe at the 1. And that's
and you're not
good.
bringing back Lonzo. So
yeah, exactly. So any other sleeper picks you have or expectations for the draft next Thursday it is?
I think I lost you for a sec.
There we go. I'm back. Yep.
Right.
Any other last expectations for the draft or anything like that?
I think we're going to be shocked at how little trades are going to happen on draft night.
Okay. That's fair.
I think we're not going to have nearly as many trades, or at least at the top of, we're not going to have many lottery trades, I don't think. Maybe, once we get to the 20s and lower, I think we start to see a lot of moving parts. But I think at the top, I don't think we're going to see a lot of movement. I think top 5, top 6 are all pretty much staying where they are.
I actually just looked at CBS's mock draft, and they had Jalen Suggs going number 2, which could be interesting.
I think there is absolutely not a chance that happens. I don't think there's any single possible way that you're talking yourself into Suggs over Green.
Yeah, well, Patrick Williams went number 4 last year, and that was interesting.
That's true. That is true, but I don't think I'd be really shocked if that happened.
I'm not any last things you want to talk about before we wrap up around the NBA?
I mean, I think it's interesting, people are speculating again, and it could totally not happen again, as we've been waiting for years and years. It's expected that Bradley Beal will finally say, I want out. I don't want to be part of this anymore. We've been saying that for years. We've been making Bradley Beal mock trades for 2 to 3 years now.
Yeah.
Ever since John Wall really got, the Achilles, the ACL, all that. And even before then, we were already starting. So the Warriors are expected to be interested if he does become available. Don't know about that fit necessarily. You're running out Curry, Thompson, Beal. We don't know what Thompson's going to be defensively. Beal is not a good defender. Curry is not a good defender. You're looking at your backcourt just being like a subway terminal, just spins, turnstiles. Yeah. But I think there are a good amount of teams that Beal really could help out. Denver, honestly, Portland could, if Portland wants to keep Dame happy and try to, really keep him, trade McCollum, flip him for Beal, probably, include a first or a second, probably 2 first rounders. The Knicks could get interested in Beal. I think that works as well there.
Cool.
I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of teams that Bradley Beal fits really effortlessly in, because he can play on the ball, he can play off the ball, he can, he's a really underrated slasher. He's a great shooter. The only thing for him is he kind of, is a little inconsistent, but that's as being the number 1 on a team. Ideally, Bradley Beal is not your number 1. He's probably not even your number 2. I mean, I think he could be your number 2, but you need a number 2 and a number 3 to be really close then if you're running Bradley Beal as your number 2. Kind of like a Denver situation where they trade Jamal Murray. In that case, I would think straight swap. You do Jokic, Beal, and then Michael Porter Jr. as your 3. And Beal can probably work there because I think him and Porter Jr. are going to be really close together, and either of them could be, the second best player. But ideally at this point, I think we know Beal is a secondary or tertiary player on a championship level team, but he really could move the needle for a team, like a Miami that also could be interested. New Orleans, I think, would be a fantastic fit, would give them like a legit player who has been in the NBA and knows what it takes to get to the playoffs and to win games.
I think Miami would be a great fit. Now, if they don't, you have to see what they do with Victor Oladipo, but, Miami could ship out Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, the sign and trade potentially, and then you roll out Jimmy Butler, Beal, and Adebayo, and that's a really, really strong 3-man set, if Adebayo stays consistent. But yeah, I mean, it's just the question of, will Beal finally request the trade out? Because every time someone brings it up to him, it's just, oh, I want to stay in Washington. But I think Washington, I think they're going to be blowing it up soon. They hired Wes Unseld Jr., so I know you were very happy with that signing.
I think that's a full player developmental signing. So I would imagine the Westbrook and the Beal are probably out. They really should just rip it down, and they're going to get a nice package back for Beal. They might get, something for Westbrook. I would not expect it to be very, very much, but I think they'll get a very nice package for Beal.
We'll have to see how everything plays out, but thank you all so much for listening. Stay tuned for potentially we might do an NBA mock draft episode. Hopefully we have some more WWE, MLB stuff coming within the next week. Make sure to follow us on all our socials at Sports Dept Pod, that's Sports DEPT Pod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you all so much for listening. Jesse, thank you very much. And we'll see you next time.